Welcome, everyone, to the Change Starts Here podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Odham. And on this week's episode, we have a return guest who, if I was able to, I would have him almost every week. Stephen M.R. Covey. If you don't know him, you really need to get to know him. I can't imagine you don't know him if you listen to this podcast. But Stephen M.R. Covey, the author of Speed of Trust, which is a life-changing book that if you haven't read or listened to, you need to go check out immediately. He's on today's podcast to talk about his latest book, which is Trust and Inspire. So instead of just kind of tell you everything I think about this book, I'm going to share with you a quote from Dr. Candace Singh, who was on our podcast last season. She's a superintendent of schools in Fallbrook Union Elementary School District. And here is her quote about this book. Trust and Inspire should be the new handbook for every person with a desire to lead others more effectively. In his compelling book, Covey has given us a thoughtful, practical, and inspiring guidepost for leading teams, families, schools, and organizations. As a leader in public education for over 25 years and a teacher of leadership, I am often asked, what is the one book you would recommend on effective leadership? Trust and Inspire is now that one book. It invites us to see the potential for greatness in others and then provides the roadmap for creating trust and inspiration for those who we are privileged to lead. I don't know if I could add any words to that, so I'm not even going to try. This conversation was so much fun to have, as every time I talk to Stephen M.R, I walk away inspired, not just motivated, as we talk about the difference in this conversation about motivation versus inspiration. I walk away inspired to get a mirror in front of myself, to think about what practices I need to reconsider about my leadership and how I serve and love others, and inspired to do the change and make the change in my life. And so this is just another one of those great conversations. And my favorite part at the end, as you guys know, we've been asking people about their habits, which his answer is really cool. And we asked about their playlists, which is in this case, really opened up a whole new light into Stephen M.R. So please hang on for the end, because the way he answers it and what he talks about the music he listens to definitely surprised me in a really cool way. And it was just really neat to see more of his personality. So this is one of those conversations. Again, you're going to walk away inspired. I hope you're going to want to share this podcast with the many folks, and ultimately I hope you're going to want to pick up Trust and Inspire when it comes out in April. So again, thanks for listening. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. If you have, thank you so much for your support. We hope this helps you improve in your journey to become a great leader, as it is me, because every day I get on here, it's a blessing, and I learn so much. So I hope it's doing the same for you. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy this conversation. All right, Stephen, thank you so much for making time to be here with us again.
Oh, Dustin, it's always great to be with you.
Oh,
I love it.
I'm excited. As you know, we just had your son on recently. And so there's no pressure in terms of what you have to stand up to today, because he was mildly impressive, to say the least, which I'm sure you're not surprised by.
No, not surprised. This is my son, Britton. For years, I've always been introduced and known as Stephen R. Covey's son. Now I'm being introduced as Britton Covey's dad. And I'm okay with it, because he's a pretty remarkable young man. I'm very proud of him, and very articulate, well-spoken. And the thing is he's that's who he is. He's a genuine, caring, kind, gracious, intelligent person. It's just who he is.
Well, he was very kind to my 8-year-old son, who I brought on the end of the podcast. And so he's got another super fan now, which I may hit him up for later. So you've been on before, our first question, but I always give people a chance, if you come back, to answer it again, just to see how you've evolved. And so first question that we ask everybody is, who are you and what do you love about what you do?
Yes, I am a father and a husband, and I am a thinker and a leader. And what I love about what I do, I work on thought leadership and on conveying it and teaching it. And what I love about what I do is the chance to try to increase trust and inspiration in our world today, in our schools, in our districts, in our states, in our countries, in our businesses, in our governments, in our NGOs, in our hospitals, our healthcare systems. We're living in a world of declining trust, and we're dangerously low in inspiration. And if we can increase trust and inspiration in these areas, in our lives, in our communities, what an impact that might have. And so I feel like I'm doing something that matters and that makes a difference. And I feel like that's my purpose, and to try to increase trust and inspiration in our world today, starting with each person. So that's exciting to me, and it inspires me itself.
Well, you and I met some years ago while we were both traveling to visit some educators together. And so, my role is I travel a lot throughout the country and talk to educators all the time. And I feel that trust has never been more needed than now. And my question to you is, as someone who's probably the most preeminent thought leader on organizational trust, when did that hit you? And how did that become kind of the foundation of your viewpoint on leadership?
Really about 15 years ago, when I first came out with the book, I began to see it everywhere, how trust made such a profound difference and impact on everything, and how most of this stuff on trust was either too soft or too academic, too simplistic or too high level, and not practical enough. And I felt like trust is impacting everything in leadership, in life. It is trust that makes our world go round. And yet we've kind of either approached it too simplistically, kind of trust everyone, or too academically with, just too erudite models that are not practical and useful. Yep. And so I felt like this is so useful and so important, and it's impacting everything. And we've got to get our arms around it, and we can actually build trust on purpose. And I felt like I could make a difference in contributing to the conversation. So I felt called to focus on trust. And so that was 15 plus years ago, I guess 16 years ago, 2006, when the Speed of Trust book came out. And the interesting thing, Dustin, is I recently put out an updated edition of the Speed of Trust book. And I added an afterword. And the afterword was titled, "The Top 10 Reasons Why the Speed of Trust book is more relevant today than it was when I published it, 15 plus years ago." And it's because while it hit me 15 plus years ago, you look around today, just to your point, we've never seen a need for greater trust than we do right now. And that's especially true in education, as we're, navigating through and coming out of this pandemic, and where we are in this process, and the need for trust and for inspiration, for that matter, as well, is just so great. And with all stakeholders at every level, and for teachers, for administrators, for principals, for superintendents, we live in a world of declining trust. And so it's become so important because of the lack of it. It's kind of like what Warren Buffett said about air, and trust. He said, trust is like the air that we breathe. And when it's present, you don't focus on it as much, but when it's absent, then everyone notices. And right now we're seeing an absence of trust. So everyone is noticing the need for trust. And so that's kind of a little bit of the journey. So my work is only beginning. I'm nowhere close to being done, because we need trust now more than ever before.
Well, to your point, I think one of the things I find most inspirational about your trust work, particularly focused on Speed of Trust right now, is that it really does feel timeless. I have educators right now that are friends of mine that have gone through your training, years ago, and just took their staff again through it again. And it's even more relevant, more powerful to them. And so you have this amazing content that is transforming the lives of millions of people across the world. And we're here today to talk about your new book that's just coming out here in the next week or so, I think, Trust and Inspire. What led you to want to go down this path? As you hold it up.
Yeah. For those that are able to watch this, I'm holding it up. And those that aren't, it's trust and inspire. I'll tell you what, Dustin, what led me down this path is looking around and seeing how our world is changing all around us. And yet our style of leadership is not. It's not keeping pace with the changes in the world. We're still too much trapped in the old model of how we lead that kind of is a relic of the industrial age. It's coming out of that time. And what's happened is we just become kind of better, more sophisticated, more advanced in our old model of leadership of what I call command and control. And it's just that today we're better at it, more sophisticated, more advanced, what I call enlightened command and control. But our paradigm of how we view people, how we view leadership is still coming from the industrial age world. And we haven't upgraded it to a new way of thinking about people and leadership for the new world. And so it's that idea of it that we've got to catch up leadership to where the world is. And that's true in education. It's really, I believe, true in education. It's true in most industries. There's a few industries that maybe are a little bit further down this path, but most are still kind of trapped in the old model of command and control, and better yet, enlightened command and control, which is better. It is better.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but when you say that, I think most of our listeners are folks that like to get a mirror in front of their own practices pretty quickly when they're listening. And so for me, I hear you say enlightened command and control. What's the difference? How do I know if I'm in that enlightened command and control versus moving towards trust and inspire?
Yeah. So questions are, how do you view people? Do you see the greatness inside of them so that your job as a leader becomes one of trying to unleash that greatness? Or do you see people as needing to be contained? And in some cases, even controlled? How do you see people holistically? Do you see the whole person? Or do you see the economic part that says, pay me well? Or the whole person that says, motivation is not enough. I want inspiration. People don't want to be motivated. They want to be inspired. Do I see that? Or am I still trying to motivate people instead of inspire people? How do I view that there's enough for everyone? A true abundance mentality in a world of scarcity, such that I would elevate caring above competing? Or are we still too much competing for scarce resources and competing amongst ourselves and between teams, and instead of truly caring and collaborating? Do I see leadership as stewardship, a job with a trust, where it's not a position? It's a moral authority. It's an inherent responsibility I'm given that comes with leadership, and versus leadership as a position that I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I'm the person in charge. And do I see also the very nature of this podcast, Change Starts Here, do I see that enduring influence is created from the inside out? So my job as a leader is to go first. Change starts here. Or am I waiting on everyone else to change? Waiting on my district to change, or my school to change, or my boss to change, my principal, my superintendent, my teachers, whoever to change? Or am I going first, leading out of modeling? So these are some of the fundamental beliefs of a trust and inspire leader versus a command and control leader that might still operate with old thinking of how we view people, how we view leadership. And so that's kind of a difference. But I'll tell you a little story on this that you'll find interesting. I was with an education audience, and I had some 2,000 plus educators in the room, ranging from principals and assistant principals to folks at the district level, including assistant superintendents and superintendents and and curriculum leaders and the like. So, mostly at the school and district level leaders of every kind. There weren't as many teachers per se, but most of the people in the room had been teachers at some point, or at least many had. And I highlighted about what a trust and inspire leader does, different than a command and control leader, and an enlightened command and control. And I highlighted on 3 specific stewardships. They model, they trust, and they inspire. And it was interesting because afterwards, I had a superintendent of a district come up to me and say, Stephen, when you started your presentation, I instantly put myself in there. Well, I'm a trust and inspire superintendent. Of course I am. But the further you went into it, and the deeper you went into these different stewardships and the fundamental beliefs behind them, I realized, you know what? I'm not quite trust and inspire yet. I'm still enlightened command and control, because while I'm trying to be a model and while I'm trying to inspire others through my behavior, I realize I don't trust that much. I trust some, but not abundantly. And I'm not really seeing the potential and trying to unleash it as much. Although I want to myself model the behavior and be inspiring personally, I realize I don't trust as much. And I kind of made the point of that's the number one barrier to becoming a trust and inspire leader, is that we think we already are one. And so sometimes reflecting on that, and this leader kind of said, I realize there's still a gap there. And so I think we're always probably somewhere on the continuum, and it's probably not all or nothing. We're on a journey, on a path of getting there.
Right.
That's the idea, is to look at the fundamental beliefs behind it and the stewardships of what trust and inspire leadership looks like.
Well, as you were talking with that example, one of the things I think about with my friends who are teachers, principals, or administrators, I feel like there's such low trust with the community right now that every misstep by one of those folks, superintendent, assistant principal, teacher, can lead to so much heartache and pain in the social media or the news that I, who would like to be a trust and inspire person, might find myself going to a more command and control out of just being scared of the what ifs. What kind of encouragement do you have leaders that are kind of paralyzed in that stage right now?
First of all, I understand it. And because context matters, and that's our context right now. And here's the danger, though, of leading out with that. If we, in a low trust world, we all become a little bit more careful, more cautious, more guarded, and people respond back more careful, more cautious, more guarded. And we could find ourselves perpetuating this vicious cycle of distrust and suspicion, creating more distrust and suspicion, and everybody feeling justified in the process. Distrust is contagious. But thankfully, so is trust. And trust and confidence can create more trust and confidence. So, but in that context of a low trust environment with different stakeholders, where everyone's a defender for a word, so to speak, and they're really waiting to kind of pounce on something, you have to be careful. And so I'm not advocating you just go out and just trust anyone and everyone, regardless of the situation, the circumstances. I think you have to look at context. And I would say, if you could try to proceed with what I call a smart trust. And a smart trust is really blending 2 key dimensions. The first is your propensity to trust. By propensity to trust, I mean an inclination, a bias, a desire to trust. I'd like that to be high, because that opens you up to possibilities. That flows out of your heart. But you're going to balance that with your analysis of the context of the situation, the risk involved, the credibility of the people involved. And when there's a lot of people out there kind of already starting from a place of distrust and trying to find areas that you're falling short, you got to be a little bit careful about that. And so it's a blending of heart with head, propensity to trust with analysis, the context, to try to find a sweet spot using good judgment of kind of maybe where to trust, how much to trust. But what I am saying is this, is rather than just perpetuating the vicious downward cycle, where because they come in with distrust and you come right back with distrust, you'll just continue it. Instead, if you could say, look, if you can come in and maybe declare your intent that the best way that we're going to improve our schools, the best way we're going to improve our community and the work we do with students and the work we do as schools is to build greater trust with each other on our teams. And we know we need to go first. We need to model it. So I'm going to lead out as a principal. I'm going to lead out as a superintendent, as an administrator, and try to go first. I'm going to declare my intent. And you open yourself up. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's why. I always give the why behind the what. If you give people a new lens through which they might view you, maybe someone begins to do that. And then I may lead out a little bit and say, and choose to be a little bit open, a little bit transparent, talk straight about it, be authentic, be real. And I might not go all the way with this because maybe that's too risky right now, but maybe I'll go part of the way. Maybe I'll do a little bit, but just showing how there's nothing to hide here. I don't have a hidden agenda. I have an open agenda. I'm transparent and I'm opening, I'm declaring my intent, maybe even declaring myself. Here's who I am. Here's how I want to lead. And it includes building trust. And I know it doesn't just happen. So we have to work at it. And I'm willing to go first. That's the idea, is you take that first step versus kind of just continuing to perpetuate that vicious downward cycle that we're trapped in right now.
I've run into leaders before that have a team of folks where they receive some feedback that trust is low. And we're going to pivot to inspire in a second. But before we get there, I think there are some folks that can get into these little dark spaces in their leadership where they look around, they just got some feedback and they believe no one in their staff trusts them. No one wants to follow them, but they know they are called to be there. They want to get people out. I'm thinking it's some of the advice that you just gave about how to have smart trust, but when a leader feels like their culture is almost bankrupt of trust, what are the baby steps that they can take to start breaking out of that? Because they want to lead, they want to take it to a new place, but they recognize they've let folks down.
Yeah. Well, that leader also needs to look into the mirror and help the entire team look into the mirror and ask themselves, do I trust myself? Do I give to my team a leader who they can trust? Is it smart to trust me? When it comes to trust, it's very easy, Dustin, to think that everybody else is the problem. And like my dad says in 7 Habits, right? If you think that the problem is out there, is everybody else, that very thinking is the problem. We've disempowered ourselves. Same with trust. If kind of everybody else is the problem, it maybe there's some truth to that, right? But that's disempowering. Look in the mirror and ask, how credible am I? How trustworthy am I in terms of my character, my competence, and does it get manifest in my behavior? Am I talking straight? Am I demonstrating respect? Those two behaviors are beautifully balanced together. Am I creating transparency? Am I clarifying expectations? Am I practicing accountability by holding myself accountable first so I can hold others accountable second? Am I listening first? Am I keeping commitments? Am I extending trust? So really looking in the mirror, and imagine if everyone were to do it, not just the one leader, but if every leader were to say, look in the mirror and say, how credible am I? How trustworthy am I? And focus on my own credibility, my own trustworthiness, and my own behavior that illustrates that. Then I'm modeling that for others of what we're looking for, how we expect to behave. And this is the kind of behavior that we're seeking, to have straight talk and to listen first to each other and to show respect, demonstrate respect for what we hear. And I model that because when you're devoid of trust, you need someone to be a model. A model can become a mentor, and you can be the model. And then you can help others become the model because you mentor them and you ripple out, the ripple effect metaphor, inside out. And someone has to go first. And that's what you can do as a leader. And then we'll start with being trustworthy. I call that, in Speed of Trust, credibility. But another word for it is trustworthy. But it's not enough to merely be trustworthy in order to have trust. So consider this, Dustin. You could have two trustworthy people working together, and yet no trust between them, even though they're both trustworthy, if neither person is willing to extend trust to the other.
Mm.
So not only do we have to be trustworthy in order to have trust, we also have to be trusting and be willing to give it and take that risk to give it in order to receive it, to create that reciprocity of us. And I find in many districts, many schools, that I literally find it probably some 50-50 on those two fronts. That sometimes, yes, there's issues of being trustworthy, being credible, either at some level where we're not behaving in ways that build and earn trust. We've lost it through behavior, and you can't. So we're not being trustworthy, but I find it equal in the aggregate that our problem is that we're not trusting enough. We're not extending trust enough to people, and people don't feel trusted, and they live down to that distrust as opposed to rise to the trust being given. And so both parts are important, to be trustworthy and to be trusting. And so for as a leader, really look in the mirror on both fronts. Am I trustworthy? Do I trust myself? Do I give to my team a leader who they can trust? Does it get demonstrated, not just in my credit, my character, my confidence, does it also get demonstrated in my behavior? Am I behaving in ways that build trust? Am I modeling the behavior of the others so they know who to look to and to follow? And are we creating that kind of cumulative culture, that a norm, a cultural norm of the kind of behavior? But equal to all of those is, am I also trusting? And so that those two parts, trustworthy, trusting, to create trust. And I find that we're lacking in both fronts, not just in the one. And we got to get good at both. And someone needs to go first. Leaders go first. That's why change starts here. Someone needs first, and that's what leaders do. They go first.
That was the point behind it. Well, I know you and I could talk trust until we're blue in the face. And so the part I am really intrigued by as a former teacher and coach is this inspiration piece. And particularly when you talk about the difference between motivation and inspiration, can you define that before talking through the power of the inspire piece of this?
Absolutely. So, motivation is a good thing, right? And it's a positive thing. And who doesn't want to be motivated? We all do. And it's just that if that's all we achieve is motivation, then we tend to just need more and more of it. And we got to come back to it. So we use rewards to motivate, and we use extrinsic things to motivate. And do rewards motivate? Sure. They motivate people to want to get more rewards. And it becomes this ongoing treadmill process of kind of motivating people constantly. And how long it lasts depends upon the circumstances, the situations, the person, but generally not long. So it's external, it's extrinsic, it's outside of people. Inspiration is internal, it's intrinsic, it's inside of people. And our job as a leader is to ignite the fire within, to breathe, to inspire. It comes from the Latin term inspirare, to breathe life into something. So I'm breathing life into something and igniting the fire within. And if that's inside of people, it's already there. We're not putting it into people. We're tapping into what's already there. And if you do that, if you light the fire that's already within, that can burn for years in some cases without the need to constantly externally provide more carrot and stick. See, command and control is a carrot and stick approach to motivation. And that's been called the great jackass spirit theory of motivation. More carrots, more sticks, and in various forms. But it's all extrinsic and external. Trust and inspire. Inspiring people. Inspiration is intrinsic, it's internal, and that can live on. without the need to constantly come back to more and greater motivation and more rewards that you're putting out at people. And so you're tapping into what's already there. And so that's a better way to lead. And I make the point that in today's world, people don't want to be motivated. They want to be inspired. Why? Because they're whole people. Body, heart, mind, spirit. It's not just economic beings. They have a desire for connection. They have a desire for contribution and for meaning and for purpose, for mattering. And so therefore, to be inspired. And it's a better way to lead in our world. I think this is where the puck is going, to use the Wayne Gretzky metaphor when he was asked, what makes you so good? And he says, I don't skate to where the puck has been. I skate to where the puck is going to be. I think the puck is going towards inspirational leadership, towards inspiration. I actually think that inspiration is the next frontier of engagement. I think it's a whole nother level beyond it. And there's data that would validate that. A study from Bain and company shows that inspired employees are even 56% more productive than fully engaged employees. There's another level of, and it's inspiring people, inspirational leadership. Trust and inspire is my capture, in juxtaposition to command and control. Yep. Even enlightened command and control. That's the old model, the new model, trust and inspire. And it's those three simple stewardships. You model, you trust, you inspire. And it's a better way to lead. And so, yes, we have a lot about modeling. We understand that, model the behavior. We have a lot about trusting. I just talked about it. Trusting, you got to go first and extend the trust. Inspiring others. That's the new area of opportunity. I think it's inspiring others is the new competitive advantage for a school and for a district to inspire your people, to inspire your teachers, to inspire your students, to inspire your parents and your communities. And here's my basic premise, and I'll pause on this one to let you dig deeper. Everyone can inspire. Inspiring others is a learnable skill. It's not just for the charismatic. We've too often equated charisma with inspiration. But Dustin, I'll bet you're like me. I know a lot of people who are charismatic who don't inspire at all. They might be motivating, but they're not necessarily inspiring. And on the other hand, I know many people who are not necessarily charismatic at all, but who are extremely inspiring because of who they are. Your very question to start off these podcasts. Who are you? Who they are can inspire. How they lead can inspire. Their modeling can inspire. The way they trust people can inspire. Their care for others could inspire. They're connecting people to purpose can inspire. And they may not be charismatic at all. So there's no equation between, charisma and inspiration. Anyone can inspire. It's a learnable skill. And that is a big idea to separate, charisma from inspiration. So we can all do this and to recognize this is our job. Let's get good at this in our world today. That's what's needed so much.
So as you're talking, I'm a big college basketball fan. Coach K, who you probably know, is retiring after 42 years at Duke, and which is just incredible to be somewhere. And I'm reading a recent book that came out about the rise and reign of Coach K. And when they talk about the different teams that have been successful, to your point, there was trust, there was direct talk and high trust and accountability amongst the teams. And there was inspiration, not just motivation, not rah-rah. There was inspiration. And so they didn't say it the way you did, but it's hitting me really hard analyzing the different years of his success. So when you think about inspiring, if I want to create an inspirational team, what are the steps I can start taking to start doing that?
Yeah. And first of all, I think Coach K is a good illustration of trust and inspire. And he started off probably earlier more as command and control.
Yes.
But over the years, he changed as the world changed to a new style of leadership that's more relevant, trust and inspire. and such. That doesn't mean you're still not authoritative. You can be authoritative without being authoritarian, and because of how you approach it. But here's the idea. If everyone can inspire, so how do you inspire? Well, if I come back to those three stewardships, you model, you trust, you inspire. The first two stewardships will help you inspire. Modeling the behavior inspires people. There's overwhelming data on this. A study from LRN shows leaders who model humility are 18 times more likely to inspire those that they're leading. That's not a little bit. 18 times more likely when you model humility. And I would add to it, and courage, to the the paradoxical combination, as Jim Collins called it. Humility and courage. That's something you model. You model authenticity and vulnerability. You model empathy and performance. All of that inspires. Modeling the behavior inspires. So you're already on part the way home when you model. When you trust others, that inspires them. In fact, I like to say, to be trusted is the most inspiring form of human motivation. What it does to people, how it brings out the very best in them. They rise to the occasion, they perform better, and they want to give the trust back to you. And so again, you're further home when you do that. So you model, that inspires. You trust, that inspires. Then we now move to the third stewardship, which is inspiring. Now, again, modeling and trusting already helps you inspire, but now I'm going to add a few more key things to it. When you connect with people and then connect people to purpose, those two things inspire. So connecting with people, how? Through caring and through belonging. Caring at the personal, interpersonal level, belonging at the team level. When people feel that you care about them, it inspires them. When they genuinely feel it, that you are a caring person, that you care about them and their interests, their needs, their win, their life, their family, their situation, not just that you're listening to it, but that you care about it. It's like the common expression that we all know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's simple, and yet that difficult. So my question to all of us is, what's your span of care? Not span of control. Got this from Bob Chapman, but your span of care. Span of control is the old command and control model. That's the way of how many people report to me. What's your span of care? Concern, demonstrating that care and concern, that inspires people. And then on a team level, when you build a sense of belonging and inclusion, that also inspires people. They're thrilled to be part of it. These are the teams you've talked about with Coach K. They're part of a team. There's a sense of belonging that inspires and a sense of purpose that inspires. So you can inspire by connecting with people through caring and belonging, and connecting to purpose, to meaning, to contribution, to mattering. And that's where the leader can try to create and embed purpose, meaning, and contribution into the work that you're doing, into the roles that people have. And you're intentional about it. You're deliberate. And some will be more naturally. I'll tell you what, in education, there's more natural connections to make because of the very nature of your work being so important for the world, for society, the education of our students, of our children, of students. So there's a lot of purpose, meaning, and contribution in that. And yet we've become a little bit almost distant from it because of all the challenges and all the distrust and all the lack of inspiration and the command and control that's been put in our way, that we feel a little bit almost distant from that. And yet there's such purpose, meaning, and contribution in the work of education that if we can tap into, and if teachers can feel this, and administrators and leaders can feel this, why their work matters, why their leadership matters, and really connecting to that, not just mission, but purpose and meaning and contribution. That's the opportunity. And my premise is that you can create and embed purpose, meaning, and contribution into almost any role, into almost any organization. And I certainly know you can do it in education in significant ways. So we're just trying to get really good at this. That will inspire people.
I know we can pre-order your book now, but I'm getting so excited. I'm like, where is it on my nightstand? When can we get this? Do you know when the first day it's going to become available for us to show up in our inboxes?
April 5th, 2022. April 5th, 2022. Trust and Inspire: How Truly Great Leaders Unleash Greatness in Others.
Well, before we wrap up, I know I just want to honor your time. So this season, you were on one of our first guests ever, but this season we tried to ask a few other questions just to get to know more about our guests. And so I'll ask a few of these quick questions, and then I'll come back to let you wrap it up with just the last bit of advice. Okay. So one of the questions that we have for everybody this year is, what are the daily or weekly habits or disciplines that you have that you think you use to make you the best version of yourself?
Well, I try to do the things that I learned from my dad, right? The daily private victory, where I focus on body, heart, mind, spirit, all 4 dimensions. I try to do it every day. Some days I'm better than others, but I try to do it every day. And some physical exercise activity, the social emotional. For me, I try to make some deposits into the emotional bank account, the trust account, of the most important relationships in my life. And I probably tend to do that more on a weekly basis, where I identify people I want to connect with and show I care. But I'll try to do that even daily, just to say, who can I connect with today? Who can I make a deposit with today? Who can I show care and concern with today? And then the mental, I try to have rituals around learning and whether it be reading or podcasts or other things. I'm trying to always stay current and learning. And then for me, the spiritual, the holistic, the idea of always connecting to what's important to me, what matters to me, to my highest values, the most important things to me, always coming back to that. And I try to do it every day, not just once a week, but every day. And so the daily private victory around, the sharpen the saw and 7 habits.
Yep.
The physical, social, mental, spiritual is something I try to do every day. And I'm 80% of the time there. I'm not 100%. So don't hold me up as a perfect standard on this, Dustin, other than I keep coming back, trying time and again to get back on track when I fall off.
Well, I appreciate your honesty there. I remember your dad, I got a chance to meet briefly before he passed. And I remember asking him, and he's the same question that he's used with other folks before, but I asked him, how do you do it living the habits? And he said, I give myself, I don't know, B-, B, C+. He was being honest with me. I was like, thank you. Like, if he would have said A, like, I do it every day, I just want to hear strive to do it, because we're all flawed. We're all full of false starts. We're all get distracted by the whirlwind of life. And so I'll say it's just refreshing to have that true north of saying, I'm going after this daily private victory. And when I get off, I know how to get back on the rails. So that was refreshing. Thank you.
It is. It is hopeful.
Right.
Even my dad fell short, but he did a great job, but he was really good at getting back on track. So I learned that from him too.
So you talk about learning from others. You cited a gentleman that wrote a book that lives probably a few miles from me, and Bob Chapman. And I do appreciate his writing. What books or podcasts have you listened to lately or read lately that have really made a huge influence on your paradigms in life?
Yeah, I'll tell you one that is just come out right now, but I happened to read it in advance because I endorsed it. It's a book by Dr. Christine Porath.
Okay.
He is a professor of management at Georgetown University. Brilliant thinker. And she wrote a wonderful book a few years ago called Mastering Civility. She's probably considered one of the world's authorities on civility. That was a great book, Mastering Civility. But her brand new book is called Mastering Unity. And she's really kind of taking on some of this fact that we've become so divided as a society. And in so many different ways, in our politics, in our social and other ways. And we've really become quite divided, and how there's a cost to that, and how if we can learn to master community, that within communities, we learn to come together and let our differences become our greatest strengths, just like you do in a team and like you do in an organization. What if we could do that in our communities as well? So she's applying the community idea, yes, to communities, but also to any community within an organization that also could come together. And the subtitle is The Surprising Ways Coming Together Moves Us from Surviving to Thriving. And it's really a brilliant book that's so needed in our low trust world, in our divided world. We need to learn to master community and get good at this. And it's another way of saying of a team, and but just, in different contexts. And she talks about uniting and unleashing and respecting and providing radical candor as part of it, providing meaning and boosting well-being is all part of this. And she gives some practical tools to do this, because it's hard when people are divided and there's not a lot of empathy and a lot of listening going on. And we've got to take those steps to do it. So trust is part of that. Inspiration is part of that. But those are also outcomes as we do this well that will increase. And so it's a brilliant book, Mastering Community, Chris Porath. She's a friend. I was really honored to endorse her book, and it's a brilliant book, and she's a brilliant leader.
Well, I feel like just like your trust and inspire, that coming together as a community has never been more important. I worked in DC for a while and was surprised, this is 20 some odd years ago, to see people with very different political ideologies hang out behind the scenes, really know each other, really care for each other. And I feel like a lot of that's gotten away to where we don't celebrate differences like it has in the past. And I think we're seeing that in every aspect of community. So I think that's a very timely subject that I'm sure she knows is one that's ready to be heard.
It's really timely. It's very aligned with my work, and we're coming at it from different angles.
Yep.
But I think that it's all part of trying to create a better world, better society.
Last quick question, then I'm going to hand the floor to you to close this out. When you're driving somewhere, when you're working out, wherever you have a playlist, like when you think about when you're listening to music, I'm just curious what music might be on your playlist if you listen to music. We have a mutual friend, Meg Thompson, and she's the one person who told me, I do listen to music and I have lots, but I prefer my sports talk radio because she lives in Philly. And so that was one of the more unique answers. So I don't want to pigeonhole you into music if that isn't your thing, but I am curious, what are you listening to when you have time to do that?
Okay. I love music, and I love to go to concerts, and I go to concerts all over. One of my favorite things is when I'm giving a presentation, say in Las Vegas, which there's a lot of events in Las Vegas. So I do a lot of those there. I'll always try to find a headliner, and I've seen Elton John there. I've seen Queen there, James Taylor, Shania Twain, Celine Dion. I love them all. I just like performers and doing their craft, so to speak. And so they're a lot of fun, but I love the band Coldplay.
Wow.
And, they're alternative rock, I guess they're called, but I followed them for 20 years. I mean, started with their first album, Parachutes, and I've just stayed with them. And to me, I think they make such interesting music, such interesting sounds, and they're constantly evolving and changing. And it may not be as avant-garde as some people today that might like some newer stuff, but to me, they're extraordinary and classic. And then I love, of course, kind of classic rock. That's why I told you I went to Queen and Elton John, stuff like that. And I love some of the older stuff. I also went to Aerosmith, by the way, in Las Vegas, which was fun. But Coldplay is I think they have some extraordinary sounds in their music, and they put on a great concert. Of course,
they are phenomenal live. I was actually shocked. I've seen a couple of their shows, like shocked how engaging it is when you've got their main star at the piano the whole time. Yep.
Yeah. Chris Martin, he works so hard at that concert. He just is giving everything he has. and as if it was the only concert it was ever giving. All of them do. They're just an amazing band, put on a phenomenal concert. So that's you actually tapped into a little hobby of mine.
I love it.
I love concerts, love going to concerts, and I'll go to all kinds. I'll go to country music too, and I love the symphony, and I love opera. So I love all kinds of music. You can't just pin me down, but when I choose something and want to really relax, I'll tend to put on Coldplay.
That is awesome. My wife, we're in the throes of having young kids right now, so going to concerts isn't our thing. But prior to the young kids, we would go to random concerts all the time, and so we're dying to get back into it.
Yeah, and I take my kids to concerts. I took my 18-year-old daughter just to Justin Bieber recently. She loved it, and I've taken her to Taylor Swift, a couple of times, and she puts on a great concert too.
Yeah.
So anyway, all kinds of music for me.
That's awesome. I'm going to just tell everybody in the intro that you're a Bieber fan, a believer, I think that's what they're called. All right. So usually at this point, it's the last question where I just ask, all the thought leaders we have are surrounded by great leadership advice on how do we create change or whatever topic we're discussing in our lives. And so for you, I do think it's important because I had the opportunity to hear you speak when we were in Hawaii recently. And I feel like the content of what you're trying to get out is so timely. I would just like for you, I won't pigeonhole you in any way, but I'd like for you just to share one last thought of why people need to really consider to dive into Trust and Inspire.
Yeah, I would say this, Dustin, because the world has changed all around us. And the old way of leading, whether it's command and control or enlightened command and control or what have you, what you might call it, it's past its expiration date. It doesn't work anymore, as if it ever really did. And it certainly doesn't bring out the greatness that's inside of people. There's just too great a gap between people's potential and their performance, and too great a gap between kind of what's needed. My father used to always say that the vast majority of the workforce has far more talent, creativity, ingenuity, intelligence, energy than their current job allows or requires or even allows them to contribute. And what an indictment on our leadership, if that's the case, and it is the case, that there's just too big a gap between what people are capable of and what they're actually giving. And so we need a leadership that brings that out. We need a different way of leading in a new world. A new world of work requires a new way of leading. And all the changes that have hit us in our society with the nature of technology changing, and so the world has changed with technology. The nature of the workplace is changing, work from home, work from anywhere. And, not as much in the school setting, but still there's that element of that that's still happening. The nature of the workforce is changing, far more diverse than ever before. The nature of work itself is changing, more collaborative, more interdependent. The nature of choice is changing. We've gone from multiple choice to infinite choice. All these forces of change have created a different environment. And to try to lead in this new world of change with the old model of leadership is just irrelevant for our times, as well as uninspiring and not going to work very well, just put it mildly. So we need a new way to lead in this new world. Trust and inspire in juxtaposition to this command and control. And this is what it's aspirational. Isn't that what we all want? To be trusted, to be inspired. I like to point out that people don't want to be managed. People want to be led. They want to be trusted. They want to be inspired. Teachers do. Administrators do. Principals do. Even superintendents do. We all long for this. And so this is trying to give us a style of leadership that is timely and relevant for the challenges in front of us for our world today. And it's learnable, it's doable. You model, you trust, you inspire. Those are the stewardships. We can get good at this, and we need it now more than ever. And so any leader, any teacher, can do this. You can be a trust and inspire teacher in your classroom and with your students and with your parents. You, as your principal, you can be a trust and inspire principal, or a trust and inspire curriculum leader, or trust and inspire superintendent. Whatever vantage point, you can become a trust and inspire person, a trust and inspire educator, trust and inspire leader. And with that, impact the people around you and let this ripple out. This is what's needed in our world today. And so I invite you, our listener and viewer, to join me, to join Dustin, to join countless others with a new way to lead in this new world. Trust and inspire, and watch what we can do together to build a better world. Thanks so much. What an honor to be with everyone. And with you, Dustin, I love what you're doing. Love your modeling of it and the difference you're making, and that truly the change starts here.
Yeah, well,
Trust and inspire starts here as well.
I feel really blessed, as you know, to be a part of this organization. And anytime we get to have you on, I get goosebumps and excited. So, unfortunately, like I said, I'll ask my son after he watches this episode to see if you lived up to Britain's hype. But I appreciate you so much. All kidding aside, thank you for having the courage to go out there and put yourself out there and your ideas out there, especially ones like Trust and Inspire that are so timely to what we need right now. I think they're timeless, but I think we need them now more than ever. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, now more than ever. I can give you one last little aside. Because Britton, you had a great session with him. He loved it. He's a pretty remarkable person, but also a great football player, right?
Right.
But, coming out of high school, he was small, and he's still small now, hasn't grown height-wise, but he played big. But coming out of high school, no one offered him initially for quite a while. And his friends were getting offers that were good players. He was a really good player, but nobody was offering, not even the Division II schools. And he was thinking, well, maybe I'm a good high school player, but not a college player. And that's what people were telling him. But he believed in himself. Then suddenly he chose the University of Utah because they came first. They saw in him potential, and they believed in him, and they came to him and said, Britton, we're going to offer you a scholarship. They're a Pac-12 Power 5 school. The division schools hadn't offered. Didn't think he was big enough. Then a Power 5 school comes in and says, we believe in you. You can do this. We don't see size. We see a talent here. We believe in you. We want you on us. And he shifted his loyalty. He'd been a fan of the rival school, BYU, and he shifted it to Utah because someone believed in him and saw his greatness even more than maybe he saw it in himself at the time. And that inspired him and it unleashed him, and it shifted his loyalty, and it also brought out the best in him. And it was a trust and inspire approach and what it does to people. So since Britton did such a fabulous job in his podcast, and he's such a great football player, you need to know his story is a trust and inspire story of a coach taking a chance on someone and saying, I believe in you, and what that does to somebody. And in this case, it was Kyle Whittingham saying, I believe in you, and what that did to him, how it changed his world. That's the power of trust and inspire. And you see it, Exhibit A, my son, Britton.
That's awesome. Well, again, I know you've got somewhere to be, so thank you for your time here. I apologize for making you a few minutes late, but it was definitely worth it on my end and to our listeners, and I'm sure of that.
Thanks, Dustin. Great to be with you. And
thanks, man. Appreciate you. Please support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, podcast on Apple or Spotify, and help us celebrate the beautiful, messy work of shaping human potential.